to you.
It's open.
All right, good afternoon. This is the February 24th Daniel Boone School Board Finance Committee meeting. I'm Steve Miller. If we can go around and take a roll call.
Dennis Strobel.
Kathy Haynes.
Rob Hurley.
Julia Olafson.
Greg Cooper.
Jennifer Leone.
Okay, and do we have a light agenda today? We have two items on the agenda. We'll start with the debt presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Lou Verdelli, RBC Capital Markets. I guess before we start this, I'll just do a super brief review of me and our firm's history with your school district. I've been doing school district public finance since 1992, so 28 years of helping schools around Pennsylvania with these managing their debt needs. I work at RBC Capital Markets. We're the leading underwriter to Pennsylvania school districts. About 125 school districts out of the 500 in the state are currently working with us. And we began working with Daniel Boone in 2008. It was basically right in the middle of the financial crisis. The school district had some existing bond issues that were impacted by what was happening to the financial markets, both the spike in variable interest rates as well as the credit ratings of the bond insurance companies falling dramatically, and interest rates had spiked up on the school district's variable rate debt. There was a little bit of a crisis, and the business manager at the time that I had worked with previously reached out and said, could you come take a look at what's going on here and see if you have any ideas and can help us get out of this mess. And so we did the 2008 financing that took out the district's variable rate issues, and that's when we started working with the district. Since then, there's been refinancings to that issue. Some new money has been borrowed along the way, but mostly refinancings that we were able to bring to the district's attention because we were kind of in an ongoing downward trend in interest rates. So what Kathy asked me to do tonight was, one, come and recap refinancings that we did just at the end of last year, 2019, and then one that actually closed here in 2020 for tax purposes, and also give you a recap of the previous refinancings that we've done, and then to take a look at what the school district's debt looks like now after all of that has happened. And then we have one opportunity to kind of give you a heads up on that we can reconsider once we get to this summer. We see where interest rates are. It's a transaction that we can't do due to its call date. We can't sell any bonds until the fall to lock in an interest rate. But if rates are where they are today, you'll have another significant refinancing opportunity. So if we start with the first page, which is actually labeled page 2 in the lower left. We put together this summary of the two transactions that we did for you at the end of last year and that closed early this year. It's the 2019 and 2020 issues. At the top left of the page, you can see the purpose of the 2019 bonds was a current refunding of the school district's 2014s, and the purpose of the 2020 bonds was a current refunding of the school district's 2015 bonds. Quick recap: when bond issues hit their call date, typically that's 5 years after they've been issued, we can do what under federal tax laws is called a current refunding, and we can refund those bonds, pay off the old holders, and issue new ones, replacing higher interest rates with lower interest rates, and that's what creates the savings for the school district. You'll see the footnote the note in the upper left corner that says 2019 and 2020 refundings were split into two series to take advantage of bank qualified interest rates and 5-year call feature. When possible, we've always tried to guide the district to issue no more than $10 million in a calendar year. If you do that, the IRS allows you to label the bonds bank qualified. Two things happen when they're labeled bank qualified: slightly lower interest rate, and that 5-year call that gives you the maximum flexibility for future refinancing purposes. So both of the issues that we just did were bank qualified. In the top box there, we have a summary of the principal amounts of each, and can see they reach about 9.7 million. The savings that was generated from the transaction, so on the 19 bonds, the debt service savings, and these numbers are after the issuance cost, $689,000 that transaction produced, and the 2020 bonds produced $553,000 of savings for a total of about 1.24 million from those two transactions. The call dates on both of those are February 15 of 2025, so that would be the next opportunity that we would ever have to refinance those issues if interest rates were low enough. The lower part of page 2 kind of shows how we structured the savings. One of the things I'll start you with when we think about the overall debt service for the school district, column 2, if you look at that, that's where we add up all of the debt payments that are required on the existing loans that are outstanding. And I'll actually have you start down at the bottom in 2033, because for the longest time, the district's annual debt service has been pretty level at a run rate of about $7 million per year. So what we've been trying to do over the last few years, through all the refinancing savings, is kind of systematically lower that and have the debt service at a lower run rate. Obviously, that's savings into the budget. And so it's been pretty successful. But when you look at columns 3 and 4, that shows how the savings that I just reviewed, that 689,000 and the 553, how it was structured basically over time. And this was based on feedback from that when we were reviewing these transactions last summer, that the board had provided, saying we'd like to spread the savings over time to kind of lower the run rate if we can. So that's what we did in columns 3 and 4. The savings were spread over the life of each of those issues. The combined savings on an annual basis is in yellow, column 5. So the two transactions together saved about $100,000 per year that we were able to take off the debt service, and that left you with column 6, which is what the debt service looks like right now.
Excuse me, a quick question.
Yes, sir.
It seems to be levelized as far as savings, except for 2022. It's $4,000, $4,300. Is there a reason for that?
Some of it's the bonds that we were refunding and the payments. We can force the savings a little bit, but if the existing debt that we're refunding didn't have a payment that year,
okay,
it's hard for us to create savings there.
Okay.
So it's just a function of what the payments look like that we were refunding. But good question.
Okay.
The debt service never goes down. Every year it's 6.1, 6.9, 6.9, 6.9. Taking the money that we're paying back in, back out.
So the actual amount that you're paying are the lower $6 million amounts
Okay.
as a result of the refinancings.
I guess the question is going back up. If you look at it, that's
Right.
another question. It's down to 6.1 this
Yes.
year, and it
Yeah.
gets back up to 6.9.
And that's
2023.
something that we've always talked about. It's best seen on page 3.
Okay.
So what we did on page 3 was we summarized all of the recent refinancings going back to 2014, because it really starts to show how you've gotten down to this lower run rate than what the old run rate at 7 million used to be. And there was really one transaction that was the big driver of that. You'll see it's the 2017 bonds. If we just skip to that column in the middle and you go down, the savings from that were significant, $4.1 million. And there was a lot of discussion among the board when we were preparing for that as to how to structure $4 million of savings. And the decision was made to spread that level over 5 budgets instead of taking a one-time shot of the savings. So you can see that in that middle column for the 2017s. If we back up and just to recap everything here, start with those 2014 bonds. At the top of the page, it's $575,000 of savings that transaction created. And when you slide down, you can see those savings were taken in the 2015 and 2016 budgets. And then the rest of the years were about the same or no savings. Then in 2015, we had another opportunity and we did a refinancing that saved about $791,000. Those savings were structured over 15, 16, and 17 fiscal years. And then in 2016, there was another opportunity that saved $954,000. And those savings were spread between 2016 and 2019. And then that brings us to the really large savings
Can we do that again?
that were generated by the 2017s, at 800,000 plus per year for 5 years, that really kind of ratcheted down the debt service that you're dealing with right now. 2017, we had another refinancing opportunity that generated 800,000 of savings, and then there was the 19 and 20s, which I just reviewed for you. When you look at the total column, you can see how, on an annual basis, how those savings have stacked up, and that's basically what you're seeing when you look at the district's total debt service, that it's been running at this lower run rate. But we always certainly cautioned that after the big refinancing opportunity in 2017, that the debt was always going to go back up to $7 million per year, and that was in fact the discussion point. There was, I think we were asked to run numbers to spread those savings over 3 years and 4 years and 5 years, and the board eventually decided to spread them over 5 years. So that's the recap of the savings. I think it is pretty significant in terms of that the district was being very proactive the last 6 years. As these opportunities arose, we brought the refinancing opportunities to the board. So in a 6-year period, I can tell you from all the school districts that we work with, there's not too many that have generated $8.5 million of savings just from refinancings over the last 6 years. So certainly the timing was right. The district was able to maintain its good AA credit rating during that time, so that higher credit rating translates to a lower interest rate. A lower interest rate, when you do the refinancings, translates to more savings. So that's the savings summary, and it's the impact of all that that then takes us to page 4, which is what does the district's debt service look like today? So this is current. Columns 2 through 9 are what you're making payments on. The top line starts with the current fiscal year that we're in, 1920, and shows what the principal and interest payments are on each one of these loans. Column 10 adds that up, so that looks similar to what we were just looking at back on page 1, at that run rate now that's closer to $6 million, but you can see out in the year 2023, then it goes back up to $6.8 million and stays level at that until 2033, where right now that would be the final payment on any debt that the district has, and in 2034 the district's debt will go to 0. So that's what the debt service looks like right now. Down near the bottom, one of the items, it's the third line down that says call date. As I mentioned earlier, we have the opportunity to refinance when the bonds hit their call date. And so if we go across there in yellow, we've highlighted your 2016 bonds because that's the next available opportunity. Those bonds become callable on February 15th of 2021. So I'll get into those details in just a bit, but I wanted to point that out. And as we go across that line, then you can see there's really no other refinancing opportunities until we get to 2025. There's a lot going on this page down in that box at the bottom. It's where we keep track of how much principal is outstanding. Maybe that's a number just to hit on since we're kind of doing a debt review for you. You go to the far right of that first line, principal outstanding, $69,993,000. So that's the amount of debt that the district currently has outstanding, just under $70 million. On the purpose, that's where we keep track of whether it was a refinancing or whether it was a new money borrowing. You can see that the district, all of these transactions have all just been refinancings. No new money's been borrowed for new projects.
The 17 was a refinance, even the 31 million.
Is that a refinance
Yes, yep.
CR,
of other debt?
CR stands for current refunding.
okay, and AR stands for?
Advance refunding,
At the bottom.
federal government,
In the
Oh, there it is, okay.
yeah, the federal government took that one away from us with the tax code change.
Okay.
We used to be able to refinance debt prior to the call date. Under the tax law change in 2018, they eliminated that for local governments to be able to refund debt prior to the call date. So we can.
When did that take effect?
I'm sorry?
When did that take effect?
With the new tax law, and the new tax laws were passed.
So
Last year.
1/1/19?
Oh, I
Sorry?
wondered, the
Did
auditor asked me what we
1/1/19
had
was when that went
advanced.
into effect, or?
Wasn't that effective in 2018, January 1
I
of
don't know.
2018, I think?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
I guess
yeah, you
that's
paid
true.
19 taxes, yeah, it was 18.
That's true.
Yeah, it was 2018 that they took the new
Yeah.
tax laws took effect.
I'm happy.
So that's everything that's going on this page. This is, if you note in the upper left corner where it says gross debt service, meaning principal and interest, right under that it says prior to state reimbursement. So you do receive a little bit of help from the state under the PlanCon program where they're assisting you with the principal and interest payments that you have. And so if you turn to the next page, 5, we net out that state reimbursement that you get. So you'll notice in the upper left corner, if you're reviewing this later, that this is now net debt service after state reimbursement. And the reimbursement percentages are in that lower box on the line that says reimbursement percentage. And as you go across there, you can see the 25.54, 17.51. Most of your issues are right at that 25% reimbursement. And the way that works is the state then multiplies that by your market value aid ratio, which is the next number under there at 60.33. And so then we do a local share calculation. And basically you can see the district local share is about 85% is being picked up by the district, and the state is helping you with about 15% of your payments. So that's the money coming back through the PlanCon program.
Is the market value ever reassessed, or is it always static?
That's a number, that number changes every year.
Okay.
Yeah, the state's constantly updating those aid ratios.
That's that aid ratio thing.
Right, right. So I just said 60.33% across the
It'll
board.
change.
Okay, so
It'll change next year.
Usually they don't move by much.
It's
Okay.
not a huge change, but
Yeah.
I did a presentation on that. I can do it again.
And the reimbursement percentages are fixed based on the original project and how much reimbursement was assigned to it. So if we look over in column 20, after your assistance from the state, your run rate is more like $6 million per year. So obviously you can see it translates to that you're getting about $1 million of assistance from the state through PlanCon. Gross debt service about 7, net debt service about 6 million per year. Okay.
Do we get that assistance from the state in the school fiscal year, or do we get it like after?
As soon as I make a debt payment, I file my 2271, whatever that form is, the PDE form, and we get that before the end of the year. So when we're accounting for that, like last year, it only was 556,000.
Right. Okay.
It fluctuates. I know the formula is kind of wonky, but it depends on, there's aid ratios, and then there's another percentage that they take. It's that 15%. It's a weird calculation, but
Yeah,
it
on
doesn't
that
quite
bottom.
make what the $1 million. It's different, because we went through the whole audit last year, and it was, we were checking and verifying. It's a weird formula.
So that's what the existing debt looks like right now. In terms of that opportunity on the 2016s, you turn to the next page, just wanted to give you the highlights on that. So in the upper left, the 2016 bonds right now, there's about just under 9.8 million of those that remain outstanding. The interest rates currently are 2% to 3.5%. And as I mentioned earlier, the call date is February 15 of 2021. So what we could eventually do later this year is have a Series A of 2020. There would be a current refunding. It could be bank qualified. getting the lower interest rates and the 5-year call. Currently, based on interest rates, actually when we put this together last week, there's about $400,000 of net savings. And what we would probably talk about doing with that savings is, we know obviously 2023 is when the debt's going back up, so it would probably make sense to target 2023, 2024, some of those years, and try and carve off a little bit more. When you look in that chart, put the bar chart on the right there of what your debt service looks like. We drew that red box there to basically show the savings from the recent refundings really kind of took the run rate from where it was down to where the bar chart is right now. So it might make some sense to further kind of target savings towards the 2023 fiscal year. Yes, sir.
That big of a drop and that big of a hop, is that because of, there's times where, you know, we took the money over, you know, like we took it over 5 years instead of 10?
Right.
Or maybe in the 1 year we took it over 3 years or 4 years, and that's why we're having that hop. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So all those previous years, the debt service was lowered from those refinancings, and eventually it's going to go back up. Yep. Timing-wise, in the lower left corner, we would probably come back and have a similar discussion with you sometime this summer to talk about the refinancing opportunity, if it's still there, depending on where interest rates are. If it is, we would probably look to your August board meeting to adopt the parameters resolution that we've done in the past. And then October would be when we can actually go into the market and lock in an interest rate, would be the earliest. We would have closing around mid-November. The tax laws allow us to do those refundings 90 days prior to that February call date. So that's why we can actually close the new issue on November the 15th. We would be within the 90 days that the federal government lets us do a current refunding.
Not to bring politics into this, but that seems like a very volatile time period in this country. Yeah, I mean,
In
October? October into mid-November
Could be
of
to our
2020.
advantage.
I mean, I just, will we have an idea where things will stand in February 2021? Like, will we have a really good idea of what's happening with interest rates in the following year at that time?
Well,
It's in the middle.
You lock in the rates in October.
so we can actually lock the rates in
Yeah, we'll lock it in
October.
before the,
Okay.
So
Yeah,
we'll
before
be
any
able to give you a
drastic
pretty
change
good
happens.
idea of what the savings look like when
I
we
see.
come to you in August and September.
it's like our best
I see.
opportunity.
So if it looks good and
Before
we're at
chaos.
400,000 in
We're not
savings,
gonna change
by the
it.
time you say go do it in August, our hope would be selling bonds in October, maybe before whatever volatility might
Okay.
happen closer to the election. But it's a good observation. You know, who knows?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
saw what happened in the markets today. You know, the
Pandemic.
Dow was down 1,000 points.
Yeah.
Interest rates dropped dramatically today. In fact, the 10-year, the yield on the 10-year Treasury, which is the benchmark for this market, for mortgages, hit the lowest it's ever been today. So if these interest rates are available today, you're going to have, are available in October, you're going to have a lot more savings than 400,000, but who knows where they'll be then.
Okay.
If you take a look on page 5 on your chart, the call date for bonds after that would be 2025 for your next available one.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yep.
That'll be the next opportunity for us to make any debt service.
So is that why your recommendation is to take that savings between that 2021 and that 2025 call date?
Yep, because if you keep
Squeeze
the
it in there,
savings
then you get
there,
that
when we
25,
get to
hopefully get
2025,
some more savings.
and
Yeah.
there's another refinancing opportunity and rates are low enough, we refinance then and we can continue
Right.
to work on that debt service.
What were
number.
the, again, just because it could have the opposite effect could still occur.
I'm sorry.
The opposite effect could still occur. It could go up.
Yeah.
It could go up.
So you just don't
It's a
refinance.
gamble.
Yeah.
But so what were the rates for that 25 one, just by curiosity?
On the issue in 2017, for example,
Yeah.
I don't know them specifically, but I think I think there's some 3% and 4%
Okay.
in there that at today's interest rates, it would probably have $400,000 or $500,000 of savings.
Right.
So no action for you tonight. Happy to answer any questions on the debt. Certainly been able to take advantage of how low rates have been over the last 6 years, and that's been
Yeah.
certainly helpful.
And, it's
But
very,
I
very
think
helpful.
it obviously is important that you know that's out there on the horizon, what is scheduled to happen, that if we don't have future refinancing opportunities, that debt service needs to get back up.
I do have one question. I don't know if you can answer. As far as total debt, school districts, are we typical, atypical, the amount of debt?
Your debt at 70 million, I would say, is kind of maybe right in the middle, actually even to the lower side
Okay.
of a district your size.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that's commented on in the credit rating report has always been that the debt's about average.
Mhm.
It's not high by the
Okay.
medians that the rating agencies measure. So that's one of the things that goes into the formula that gets you the AA rating. So I'd say you're probably about average.
Just looking at it as far as financing, with all the pressures on taxpayers and coming up, should we be taking on more debt potentially? Is something.
Yeah, and you know, this another thing that you can look at is the state gives you a formula that is the maximum amount of debt that you can have outstanding. And under that state formula, you're nowhere
Yeah, I
even
don't think we'll do
close
that. Okay.
to their max. Now, we have districts that are in very rapidly growing areas,
Sure.
and they are right up against their state mandated borrowing limit. Yours, you're nowhere even close. I think you probably have 40 or 70 million dollars
Okay.
of borrowing
I know.
capacity.
So something that we need to consider if the opportunity is there, if the need is there.
Oops, sorry.
Time's up.
Sorry. Your time is up. No, just kidding.
No, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, thank you. It's
Very good stuff.
Very, very
Thank
informative.
you.
Sure. And then, so we'll obviously be in touch probably June if the savings, I'll reach out to Kathy and say, hey, we probably ought to come
Okay.
talk about the financing opportunity on the 2016, see where it's at that point in time,
Mhm.
and we'll let you know.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, the call date whenever you can, yeah.
Okay. The other item on the agenda for tonight was the dental insurance discussion.
Okay, I have the dental insurance. I did an evaluation. We're up for renewal. We'll have to sign a new contract, 7/1 for 20. If some of you might remember that 2 years ago we switched. We are part of a consortium with Fleetwood, Hamburg, and Kutztown, and Daniel Boone are all in part of like not a real consortium because the prices are different for everybody. It's a really strange way that they set it up. But Delta Dental, we've had some bad luck with they promised us big things and everything was the same, and then it wasn't. And then we ended up paying $10,000 to $15,000 of claims for some of the unions because if the plans don't mirror, then the employees shouldn't have to suffer. So because we couldn't negotiate with Delta Dental to pay these claims, which we found out after the fact, the other districts were able to negotiate that, but we were not. But regardless, we weren't able to get those. And we sat down in a meeting, and Delta Dental came back with a 10% increase. So I was already on the fence with staying last year, but now I'm really on the fence. I've looked into United Concordia's with who we had before, which we had no problems with. And I went a self-funded route because I do think there's a potential for savings for the district. I don't think, because with the fully funded, you're going to be paying, like this year, I think there was a $20,000 difference between where our actual claims came in and what we paid in premiums. So I think it would be in the district's best interest. My recommendation is to go with the self-funded with CM Regent United Concordia, go back to what we had under a better plan. There's also an advantage for as long as United Concordia CM Regent pays for it, they have a tuition rewards program that when you join and you're a part of it, you get $2,000 a year for tuitions for reward for any child that they put underneath the plan. It's a very good plan. They have a lot of universities listed. I have them in this little booklet right here, if anybody's interested in seeing it. But it's not only for the kids, it's also for any kids that, like, any cousins, nephews, they can sign anybody up. And then you just distribute the money accordingly how they want to. And the nice thing is they take that account with them when they leave. And the district, it's free to the district. We don't pay any money, and we would offer it to the employees as long as United Concordia CM Region offers it for free. So that's my recommendation. I would really like it if maybe we can bring it out, if that's okay.
Does anybody have any objections or?
Anybody have any questions about it? And I did invite Amy to make sure that she heard the presentation, and I will be sending that on to her so the union can look it over, but the coverage is identical. This we know for sure because we've already lived through United Concordia, and we didn't have any issues through United Concordia.
I guess, yeah, I think there are different options with United Concordia, different, so I assume you're going back to what you had before. You're
Exactly what we
familiar.
had before.
Self-funded, is there any risk to being self-funded?
Yes. If everybody in the district had massive dental problems in 1 year, that's the risk you're taking.
So just so I understand, were there concerns about the level of coverage with Delta Dental, or just that the cost was higher?
The cost, when I stayed within the consortium, this is kind of funny, and if you follow what I'm saying and how I don't trust Delta Dental right now, because when I removed us from, which we were, if you take the 3 schools, we're about the same size. There might be a little bit bigger, but we're about the same size. So we're a level playing field. If you take Daniel Boone out of that consortium, my rates went up, theirs stayed the same. Their rates should have gone down if I was that big of a problem. So they're not being, they made so many promises in the beginning, and then the second year they came back and they gave some of the people in the consortium a better plan. We had to fight tooth and nail for it. We never got what we wanted. We ended up paying $10 or whatever it was, $15,000 and more in coverage for employees that didn't get what they needed. And now we have a product that's in it. If you look at the way that they do it, the premium, they have us in what's called Premier. Premier covers 90% of the claims to the dentist. United Concordia, the deal is 50%. If I were a dentist, I would go there and get the 90%. That would be what we would be paying, and that's going to be affected in our rates. I don't support Delta Dental in that area because they're only driving up costs to all the employers that take Delta Dental. I've learned more about dental in the last 2 weeks. I'm an expert. And my recommendation is this, but if anybody has any, we can always try it. And if you guys feel that, if the board feels that this is too costly, we'll look at the numbers at the end of the year. We can go back to a insured, fully insured.
2 things. One, can they underwrite part of it for that massive risk?
It's either this way or that way.
It's just one or the other.
Yes.
The second thing would be, how can we be in a consortium and then pay portions of another school's debt and us not have a leg to stand on legally? That would be Mr. Suber's thing. I mean,
Yeah, I don't.
Well, I guess the other question is, we have the BCIU health plan. There's
That's
nothing
the
for
different
dental?
one.
Yeah, but they don't have.
No, because all the plans are so different across, because some people have their employees paying for the dental insurance.
Okay.
Hint. And then some people don't. Some people offer just single rates. Some people offer orthodontics. So the plans are so different across Berks County, they can't actually put that into the trust.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not just cost that I'm concerned with. I also want to know what kind of service we were getting for the employees. You know, it's not. I kind of look at it as a package.
That's how, and that's why I chose United Concordia.
do we pay for their dental? Fully pay.
Negotiations. Join the committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine to make the change. If-
All right.
I mean,
Yes.
or at
And
least
we
to
covered the short-
open that discussion with the union.
I agree. Yep. Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, and anything else to bring up from the Finance Committee? Okay, so that concludes the February Finance Committee meeting. It's 7:22.